bring in Pete Thamel, the Yahoo Sports college football writer, and he joins me here on the show. Pete, we were speculating that you left SI because they wouldn't let you work on SI Eats. Would you? Can you confirm?
I can neither confirm nor deny that. Only if Shams reports it. That's
Shams.
the only way
Shams. It's Shams. Let's get your colleagues right there, Pete.
Sorry.
Let's get your colleagues.
I'm new.
We were talking
a lot coming at me.
We were talking about the NFL teams that might be tanking this year, and all for the purpose of drafting one of these top quarterbacks. You've written about these quarterbacks. How many top 20 guys, how many top 20 quarterbacks you think are going to be in this year's draft?
I think they're tanking specifically for talk radio show hosts like yourself, actually, and throughout the greater New York market. I think that's the actual reason behind their tanking. Fascinating concept, right? You have enough of it in your day job covering the NBA. I would say right now, Chris, there are 3 quarterbacks who you can say with some assurance will be top 20 picks. And then there's about a field of 6 or 7 guys who could enter that with big seasons. Obviously, the big 3, if you will, are Josh Allen at Wyoming, Josh Rosen at UCLA, and Sam Darnold at USC. The Suck for Sam campaign has already begun in earnest in New York amongst the JETS fans, which has been fascinating. And then there's the second tier of really good players. The guy I like a lot is Clayton Thorson at Northwestern. A little bit of a late bloomer coming out of high school. Really started to find his own last year. Played really well against Ohio State. How you play against those 1 or 2 really high-tier teams on your schedule matters a lot to NFL evaluators. I saw Mason Rudolph last night from Oklahoma State. I don't think he's a first-round type guy. He's more of a mid-round type guy, but he's a guy who's going to be in the Heisman Trophy conversation for sure. And then the big dark horse name among scouting circles right now is Tanner Lee at Nebraska. He's a Tulane transfer, and a lot of people thought he had some of the best tools of all the quarterbacks at the Manning Academy this summer. How
many people drooling over Josh Allen have actually seen Josh Allen play?
Well, he threw 15 interceptions last year. I'm a little pump the brakes on Josh Allen, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I know some coaches out in that conference and stuff, and I'm pumped the brakes on him as a top 5 pick. We have to see a lot more before that. He has the physical tools, and it's the Carson Wentz narrative, which I think has drawn a lot of people in, Chris, because he was recruited by Craig Bohl and Brent Vigen at North Dakota State, who recruited Carson Wentz. He was sort of an overlooked guy, and they have the same build, and they played in the same system. I just think that's a lot of interceptions against bad competition. And Oregon goes there week 3 or 4 this year. And again, this Oregon team isn't the Chip Kelly era of Oregon, but that'll be an interesting test to see him against a high-end defense. But, some Mountain West coaches I know are kind of like, he could be a first-round pick, but I think for him to go number 1, there's a lot of runway there. He's got to prove a lot.
Talking to Pete Thamel, senior writer, Yahoo Sports, joining me here on the Dan Patrick Show. Ohio State, Pete, last night, a little bit of a slow start against Indiana before they stepped on the gas. Anything you saw in that first half against Indiana that troubled you?
So I was in Stillwater last night, Chris, at the Oklahoma State game. So I was only kind of peeking at my laptop to watch the Buckeyes. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if they won by 28 on the road in a conference game against a bowl team, a reasonably good team, and that's about how they should have done it. I think there was some adjustment to the new offense of Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day when they when things opened up, and I think the worry would be this: they still don't have an overwhelming collection of skill players at receiver. They're good. But Oklahoma State has better skill than Ohio State, and that's one place where that program has lagged the past couple of years. And I think early on you saw Paris Campbell drop a sure touchdown pass. His whole career has been dropping passes, and he's probably their most talented guy. So I think things did click, and sometimes with tempo, when you're going to run a little faster, you need some momentum and you need some synchronicity and you need some cohesion before things can get going, and they clearly did in the second half.
If South Florida runs the table, how high can they climb in the rankings?
I think they can get into the top 10 easily. I don't know if they can get into the top 5 or top 4.
What gets them into the top 5?
Boy, they would have to really dominate everyone they play. I believe their only Power 5 game this year is against Illinois at home, and it's on a Friday night in September. To me, thumping Illinois at home, that's what Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan are supposed to do, right? Like we wouldn't blink if they did that. If that is the highlight of your resume. Now, I do think the AAC is a decent conference, Chris. I think it's proven the last 3-4 years under this configuration that it can compete at a top 15-ish level in college football. But the problem is that league is going to have the argument against it is week in, week out, you're just not playing these high-caliber teams. I think about it, we're criticizing Ohio State for going to Indiana when an Indiana-caliber game is going to be South Florida's best game, right? Like, if anything, that last night's performance might have worked against Ohio State more than it would for them, even though they won by 28 on the road. Whereas if South Florida beats Illinois by 28, that's going to be their landmark victory. So I think it helps that they've started in the top 20. I think having Charlie Strong there helps because there'll be a lot of attention, just like when Tom Herman was at Houston. Like, you need a guy who people are going to want to pay attention to, and you need to be in the media's eye, you need to be in the voters' eyes, etc. But I just don't think at the end of the day they could get there without some kind of just perfect season. Quentin Flowers would have to be a top 5 Heisman guy. They would have to blow everyone in that league out of the water. But I'm skeptical that the schedule would allow them to do that. I mean, Houston had the perfect storm last year because they had a high-end Louisville team, and they obviously had that home game against Oklahoma to open the year where they were 14-point underdogs and just blew them off the field.
We haven't seen a back-to-back Heisman winner since Archie Manning. Nobody's really talking about Lamar Jackson as being a front runner. Why is that?
Well, our Pat Forty at Yahoo Sports wrote a nice profile of Lamar this year. I think he played terrible down the stretch last year. To be honest, that's probably the biggest reason why we're not talking about Lamar Jackson. He had a rancid offensive line that just caused an all-out assault on him, and it didn't go well for Lamar at the end of last year. He threw picks. He looked disheveled. And I think some of it too, Chris, like, we're not talking about him because NFL evaluators still aren't sure if he's going to be a quarterback or receiver at the next level. Is he Terrell Pryor or is he Michael Vick? We don't know. I think Lamar Jackson will be a high-end NFL player of some caliber. But is he Braxton Miller? I don't know. So that's the accuracy issues. So the lack of NFL conversation, because he's not lumped with those big 3 NFL guys, I think have led to the perceived nobody's talking about that we're kind of at now. Thank God we're playing games soon, by the way.
I know. Archie Miller, by the way, not Archie Manning. My mistake on that one. Before I let you go, Pete, I want to get your thought on a college basketball topic.
Archie Griffin.
Why do I keep saying Archie Miller? I can't get.
Archie Miller's the Indiana basketball.
He is.
Coach.
I initially wanted to say Archie Moore, but he's the boxer, right? I don't know. I'm getting there's only like a there's only like a handful of Archies out there, and I can't get any of them right. LaMelo Ball with this new sneaker line. How much fire is he playing with when it comes to eligibility with the NCAA?
He is juggling flames, my friend. He is juggling flames. But here's the thing about LeVar that you realized last year if you were around UCLA at all. LeVar doesn't care about NCAA eligibility. He would rather get the pop of publicity that comes with selling his shoes and the controversy and being in the forefront than he would actually like securing eligibility for his son. LaMelo is not as good as Lonzo right now.
Yeah.
All right? Yeah, and he's just not. So, look, Lonzo was better than his problems, Chris. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, he's a once-a-generation type point guard, maybe, right? Like, he was the number 2 pick in the draft. LaMelo is not that good. He needs college, and he may need it for more than a year. Like right now, we're 2 years out of projecting here, but this isn't some 7'2" kid who we all knew at age 11 was going to be a top 5 pick. So I just think, look, what LeVar has done for the most part has worked. I don't know right now on paper if this is going to work. It could, but I really think he put his middle finger up to Indianapolis at NCAA headquarters with what he did yesterday, and it did not go unnoticed.
Do you think he's going to be eligible in a couple of years?
I mean, NCAA eligibility is like harder to predict than like Powerball numbers. There's so much that goes into amateurism and everything. But I just think the manner that this has been handled, Chris, is not going to help him be eligible.
Yeah.
I wonder if guys start going to the D League. You'd know more about that than me because the G League. I'm getting everything wrong.
Yeah,
today.
they do, and there's an upside to that to some degree because you're working with coaches and all that. But I thought you made the right point in that LaMelo might not be good enough to do 1 year in the G League and all of a sudden he gets drafted inside that top 10. He might need 3 years in college, or he might not be getting drafted at all. I mean, he doesn't have the same – he's not as physically imposing as Lonzo is. I think Lonzo's a big, strong point guard in addition to being a tall guy. LaMelo's skilled, but I think there's a real possibility he doesn't play, or at least not high-level basketball, the level of Lonzo does. And so going to the G League wouldn't make any sense.
Yes, exactly. I mean, LaMelo's limitations, and there's a few right now. The number one is physical. Now, that could change in the next 2 years. Also, Lonzo is like a once-in-a-generation passer.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, what a gift he has to pass the basketball. I can't say right now that LaMelo has that skill at that level because I haven't really seen any point guards in college have it at the level that Lonzo has it.
Before I let you go, the best tailgate that you've been to in the college ranks is where?
You know, everyone always asks me about tailgating. You know what I do?
This is why you got fired from SI. This is why you couldn't do SI Eats. I mean,
I couldn't handle the eats. I typically get to the game 3 hours early and like walk through with my eyes averted down because, as you know, the liquid gold temptations that are out in the parking lot, I'm easily swayed by, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to. I think this is my best tailgate story. I was running once in LSU before an LSU game. It was like 8 hours before an LSU game at night, and a bunch of guys pulled up in a pickup truck while I was like sweating through my 2.5 mile saunter and like threw me a beer. I was like, LSU, you're all right. They could clearly see I was just sweating.
Hey, great stuff, Pete. Great to visit with you as always, man. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, it's Pete Thamel, senior writer, Yahoo Sports, joining me here on the Dan Patrick Show.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.